I'm Lucas. I'm 37. And Christmas morning was the last time I ever knocked on my mother's door. My twins, Kayla and Theo, were bundled up in their new winter coats, Theo clutching the poem he'd practiced for weeks, and Kayla holding up a glittery drawing of our family under a cotton ball snow sky. We were 10 minutes early. The driveway was clear, the porch light was on, and yet, something in my gut told me to turn around. Instead, I knocked. A minute passed, then 2. No answer. Upstairs, the curtain moved. Finally, the door creaked open just an inch. My mother didn't smile. She didn't say Merry Christmas. She just leaned forward, voice calm, and clipped today's not a good day for your kind of energy. I didn't respond. I took my kids by the hand and said, let's go get pancakes. We ended up at a diner off Highway 42. Warm booths, syrupy laughter, real whipped cream. I told them we were starting a new tradition, our own brunch, just us 3. They smiled, but their eyes kept drifting to the window. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. It was my younger brother, Evan. He didn't say hello. Just, what the hell did you do, Lucas? Did you really cancel Becca's lease? Becca, our youngest sister, was moving out next week. I'd agreed to co-sign, or at least I thought I had. I didn't cancel anything, I said, blinking. Well, the leasing office said you withdrew your signature this morning. She lost the apartment. She already gave notice at her place. Half her stuff is boxed. I swear to you, I didn't. You're unbelievable, he snapped. You just don't want her to be happy. Then he hung up. That night, after tucking in the kids, I went digging. I searched my inbox. Nothing recent from the leasing company. Then I spotted an old forwarded message from my mother's address subject line looked like spam. WD action required sign-off verification. I opened it. Inside was a PDF. My name, my info, my supposed digital signature. A document withdrawing my co-signature from Becca's lease. But I hadn't signed it. I checked the metadata on the document. The IP address was from their street. My mother had used my information info I'd given her last month when she said she needed help setting up autopay for utilities and forged a signature. Pretending to be me, she sabotaged the lease. Then waited for me to show up with my kids on Christmas morning so she could say I wasn't welcome. Like some Shakespearean performance. Except it wasn't a play. It was just our family being exactly what it had always been, a blame factory. And I was the scapegoat they no longer bothered pretending to like. The curtain flick, the porch light, the cold voice. It all made sense now. The betrayal didn't shock me. What did was the coordination. Becca knew. Evan knew. They had to. Otherwise, how did he call me 10 minutes after the leasing office did? I didn't call anyone back. I didn't scream or demand answers. I just logged into the trust account. You see, before my father passed, he'd set up inheritance disbursement funds for each of us released triggered by milestones, marriage, buying a house, having a child. I was the trustee. Becca's lease was her milestone. She'd emailed me about the down payment back in October. I hadn't processed it yet. But now I flagged her account pending review, locked it down. No notification, no warning. Then Evan, who'd been pestering me for weeks for a verification letter to use his share as collateral for a business loan, I did the same. Disabled access, changed the password. Let the bank tell him no. This wasn't revenge, this was correction. Because for years, I'd been the bridge they all walked over. When Evan wrecked his car, I co-signed the lease for his next one. When Becca overdrafted, I transferred her a quiet $200 here, $150 there. When Mom stirred chaos, I was the cleanup crew. But now they'd made it clear I was no longer family. I was a utility. So I pulled the plug. A few days into January, Mom sent a group text, "Hope everyone's easing into the new year. Miss seeing you all?" I didn't reply. Evan gave it a thumbs up. Becca sent a heart. Then Mom called. I let it ring. Voicemail. "Just wondering how you all are. Haven't heard from you since Christmas. Hope we didn't do something to upset you." Didn't do something. She forged a legal document. Framed me, turned my siblings against me. But sure hope we didn't do something. I stared at my phone. Then locked every digital door she used to walk through without knocking. They wouldn't even hear the latch click. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Just lay there watching the shadows shift across the ceiling, the weight of that forged PDF pressing against my chest like a dumbbell. I kept running the timeline through my head, the lease, the signature, the porch moment, Evan's call. It was too clean, too rehearsed, which meant only one thing they had talked about this. Maybe not in one big scheming session, but in shared silences, complicit glances, text threads that didn't include me. They knew what they were doing, and they knew it would land on me. In the morning, I watched the kids eat their cereal at the table, still in their pajamas, laughing over a cartoon. I didn't want them to know. Not yet. They deserved to think holidays were still about lights and cinnamon rolls and snowmen with scarves, not lies dressed up as concern. I kissed them goodbye, told them we'd go sledding this weekend, then shut the door and just stood there in the quiet. I didn't rage. I didn't plot revenge. What I felt was something worse clarity. The kind that feels like someone wiped fog off a mirror and suddenly you see everything you didn't want to admit. The micro slights over the years. Mom's backhanded compliments. Evan always arriving empty-handed but leaving with a gas card. Becca turning every group text into a performance about how hard her life was. The way I'd been slowly pushed to the outer orbit of a family I used to anchor. I thought I was helping. They thought I was convenient. I poured a coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. First, I archived Becca's October email asking for the deposit. Then I found Evan's draft request for the inheritance balance confirmation. He'd asked me to hurry it up, said it was time-sensitive. I didn't delete it. I saved it. I created a new folder, Evidence of Convenience. Inside it, I dropped PDFs, text screenshots, timestamps, every little receipt that said we only call when we need something. That week, I called the trust's legal contact, Mr. Snyder, a no-nonsense estate lawyer my dad had worked with. I asked a few questions, careful to sound professional, detached. He confirmed I had every right to restrict access to the accounts, especially given suspected misuse or manipulation. I didn't even have to explain, just use the language. He said we can initiate a compliance lock if needed. I told him to proceed. 3 days later, Evan sent a follow-up. Hey, any updates on that letter? I didn't reply. Then Becca, I really need the deposit by Friday or I lose the new spot. What's going on? I let it sit. The silence felt heavy, but not on my shoulders anymore. Friday evening, someone knocked. Not the doorbell, just 3 quick knocks. I knew it was Evan. He always knocked like he was in a hurry, even when he had nowhere to be. I looked through the peephole. Same faded bomber jacket, same furrowed brows, like the world had personally betrayed him. I opened the door halfway. He didn't smile, just held out a manila folder and said I rewrote the loan letter. This one's tighter. They need it Monday. I didn't take it. You can leave it in the box. He blinked like I'd slapped him. Seriously, I drove 40 minutes in snow for this. I shrugged. You didn't have to. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Something passed through his eyes, not anger, not yet. Confusion, maybe the early tremors of realization that I wasn't playing the role anymore, that the family fixer was off duty. He dropped the folder in the mailbox and walked away without another word. I didn't touch the folder, left it there until the sleet soaked through the corners. The wind peeled it open. By Sunday, it was mush. That Monday, I got a new group message from Mom. Just checking in, miss, seeing everyone. Hope the new year is treating you all kindly. No mention of Christmas. No mention of my kids. Just a soft little probe, a baited hook. Evan reacted with a heart. Becca replied, love you, I didn't even open the thread. But I knew what they were doing. Testing. Wondering how long my silence would last. They were used to me circling back eventually, used to me cracking first. But not this time. This time I was watching the fault lines widen. That week, Becca's application was rejected. She sent a long email. Not sure what happened with the lease funds. I hope you're okay, but this is messing up my life. I need clarity. Clarity. That word made me laugh out loud. I wanted to write back, you had clarity when you let her fake my name on a legal document. But I didn't respond. I flagged the email and moved on. Later that night, I made a list. Not resolutions, just truths. One column, what I've given them over the years. Another, what I got back. The list was brutal. Thousands in wire transfers. Emergency car payments, babysitting, silence, swallowing. And what did I get blame? Ghosting. A door cracked just wide enough for rejection. I left the list on the table. The kids asked what it was the next morning. I told them, just notes, grown-up stuff. Theo nodded. Kayla asked, are we still going sledding? Yes, I said, always. That weekend, we built the biggest snowman in the neighborhood. We gave him a cardboard sign that read, Joy lives here. It was small. It was ours. Monday morning, I got another email from Becca. This one, shorter, sharper. Please respond. I don't understand why you're doing this. We're family. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it without opening. Because here's the truth. I'm not doing anything. I'm just not undoing anymore. And for the first time in my adult life, that's enough. By the second week of January, the silence I handed them wasn't just quiet, it was disruptive. I hadn't replied to a single message, hadn't acknowledged a single call, and that more than any argument started to unnerve them. Becca sent another email, this one practically pulsing with urgency. I don't know why you're ghosting me. I'm trying to move forward. You're making it impossible. I didn't even hover my mouse over the reply button. I just archived it next to the others. I was done being the one who explained, the one who justified, the one who smoothed out the guilt of people who never paused to feel it in the first place. Then Evan tried a new tactic. He sent a long message with bullet points. Bullet points, as if I was an accountant auditing a broken relationship. I've always supported you, even when I didn't agree. Becca was just trying to build her life. Maybe mom overstepped, but that doesn't mean you burn everything down. We're not perfect, but we're still your family. I didn't respond. I saved it. Not because I needed receipts, because I needed reminders. Reminders that this wasn't about one document or one holiday. This was erosion, death by 1,000 paper cuts. And the moment I stepped out of the role they had assigned me, they started panicking. Because who fixes the family when the fixer quits? That weekend, Mom left a voicemail. Her voice was soft, performative, with the slight tremble she always used when she wanted to sound maternal. Lucas, sweetheart, I just want to talk. I'm worried about you, about the kids. We didn't mean to hurt you. Can we please just talk this out like adults? That line, we didn't mean to hurt you. It's the anthem of every manipulator once they realize they've lost control. It doesn't mean regret. It means inconvenience. It means, please reset the board so I can play again. I didn't call back. Instead, I took the kids to the lake. Winter air, still ice-quiet trees. We packed sandwiches. Kayla made hot cocoa in a thermos. Theo brought his magnifying glass because he thought he might find a fossil. It was the kind of slow day you don't post about because you don't need to. It just fills you up. We came home just before sunset, cheeks red, boots muddy. And that's when I saw the package on the doorstep. Brown box. No return address. Inside a tin of cookies, a framed photo of me at age 7 holding my first model rocket and a handwritten card. Hope this reminds you where you come from. No apology, just nostalgia weaponized. I threw the cookies out. The photo I shoved into a drawer. I didn't say anything to the kids. They were still humming from the lake. I wasn't going to let her ruin that. But something shifted that night. It wasn't rage. It was resolve. They thought I was punishing them. They thought this was emotional warfare. But they were wrong. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a quiet secession. I wasn't slamming the door. I was removing the hinges. By late January, Becca's patience cracked. Her new message had no greeting, no soft edges. I don't know who you think you are, but this is just cruel. You're punishing me for something I didn't even do. You've always acted like you were better than the rest of us. Guess you finally get to prove it. I didn't dignify it. I didn't even flinch. The truth was, I had spent years being the safe one. The helper. The financially stable older brother who never asked for anything. When Dad died, they put me in charge because I was the only one who wouldn't blow it. And they loved that until I used that same authority to say no. Control is only comforting when it benefits them. That same week, Evan's ex called me out of nowhere. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. She said he was not doing well, that he'd missed payments on the renovation warehouse he'd leased, and the bank wouldn't approve his loan without my letter. I asked her, "Why are you telling me this?" She paused. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd listen to you. I'm not interested in fixing his choices, I said. She sighed. That's what I figured. But I had to try. Click. Becca, meanwhile, moved back in with Mom. I only knew because she posted some faux profound caption on Instagram. Sometimes when life falls apart, you have to rebuild with the people who never left. It would have been poetic if I hadn't known better. That house wasn't sanctuary. It was strategy. A nest of shared victimhood wrapped in floral curtains. Then came the church quotes. Bible verses forwarded from Mom. Lines about forgiveness and family and bridges not being burned. She'd never quoted scripture before, not unless it was in a Christmas card. Now suddenly, she was the high priestess of reconciliation. I ignored everyone. Then she tried something bolder. A voicemail full of honey. Lucas, I've been thinking about the estate. I want to make sure everything's handled fairly. Maybe we could sit down. Just lunch, just to talk. There it was. The bait. The not-so-subtle reminder that she held power too. The suggestion that if I just played nice, there might be a seat saved for me at the table again. But what she didn't know was that Dad had already set the terms in stone years ago. The house wasn't hers. It was in a trust, and a third of it was legally mine, no matter how many cookies or voicemails she sent. She couldn't cut me out, and I had no intention of ever stepping foot in that house again. I was done measuring myself against their approval. Kayla asked one night if Grandma missed us. Theo said maybe Grandpa's ghost was lonely. I told them the truth. We don't visit people who lie, even if they used to buy us gifts. They looked sad, but they nodded. The thing about kids is they don't need long speeches. They just need consistency. I wasn't raising them to be polite. I was raising them to be safe. The last straw came in early February. The school called. My mother had shown up at Kayla's classroom saying there was a family emergency. Tried to sign her out early. She didn't even have pickup clearance. They stopped her at the office and called me immediately. I drove there shaking not from fear, but fury. She hadn't called me. She hadn't asked. She just walked in like she still had rights she'd long since burned. I sat with the principal, signed a new form, removed all extended family from the emergency contact list. Then I blocked my mother's number on both kids' phones. When they asked why, I said, because love protects. And protecting you means keeping the wrong people out. That night, I stared at the ceiling again. But this time, the weight was different. Because now it wasn't about being hurt. It was about being done. And once I crossed that line, there was no going back. After the school incident, there was no more doubt. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't overreacting. I had been giving my mother and siblings the benefit of the doubt for decades. But once she tried to take my daughter out of school without my consent, without warning, just swooped in like it was still 1996, and she got to make the calls, something inside me finally solidified. This wasn't distance anymore. This was war. I didn't yell. I didn't drive to her house and demand answers. I didn't even call. I just opened my laptop, pulled up my lawyer's contact, and left a short voicemail. I need to update my will. Urgently. Full guardianship exclusion clause, immediate family members included. He called me back within the hour. No surprise in his voice. Just a steady professionalism that told me I wasn't the first parent to do this. I gave him everything: what happened at school, the forged lease, the financial manipulation, the pattern of blame shifting. He just said, we'll make sure your kids are protected. Permanently. And we did. New will. Clean lines. If anything ever happened to me, custody would go to my college friend Jamie and her partner, who the kids already adored. Financial assets would go into a managed trust for Kayla and Theo, untouchable by anyone with my last name. Biological relatives barred from guardianship visitation decision-making. That was the day I truly put the past in a vault. The fallout came fast. The following week, I got a fraud alert from the bank. Evan had tried to use his inheritance account again, except this time he forged a verification letter. Copied an old email, slapped my digital signature on it, and submitted it as part of a collateral package. It didn't even look real. The date was wrong. The wording was sloppy. He didn't even bother to change the font. I called the bank's fraud department, had them flag the account. Within 2 days, both Evan's and Becca's trusts were frozen under breach of agreement. Not paused, not reviewed, frozen permanently. Because the contracts Dad signed included a clause any fraudulent activity or misuse immediate forfeiture. They were done. No appeals, no soft landings. Then I wrote a letter. Certified, notarized, delivered to my mother's house. I didn't vent, I didn't insult, I just listed the facts. The school pickup attempt, the forged lease cancellation, the trust account terminations, the updated legal documentation securing full protection for my children. At the bottom, I added one sentence, "You will not be a part of our lives again." 2 days later, she showed up at my house. She didn't make it to the door. The police came fast. I'd already flagged her name with local enforcement and requested a no-contact notation after the school stunt. The officer told her she was trespassing. She cried, not the weeping kind, the wounded performative kind. Said she didn't understand, that she was just trying to fix things. But she wasn't trying to fix anything. She was trying to reclaim control. That's the part she never got. This wasn't about forgiveness. This wasn't about peace talks. This wasn't a standoff where both sides meet halfway. This was me building a new fence with no gate. And what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the house she loved so much, the one she always said was hers, it wasn't. Dad had moved it into a trust before he died. And in 4 years, when the trust matures, a third of it legally becomes mine. Irrevocably. She can't stop it, can't contest it, and I have no intention of keeping it. Because it's not home. It's just drywall soaked in control and fake Sunday smiles. I'm going to sell it. Every room, every framed lie, every floral chair that held a whispered insult. Gone. By spring, they stopped reaching out not because they understood, but because they realized I wasn't bluffing. The accounts were locked. The legal doors were sealed. There was no more role for me to play in their drama. I took the kids to the cabin every weekend. Just the 3 of us. No cousins, no obligation brunches, just air trees, firewood, and peace. One evening, Kayla brought out an old photo album from the closet. One of the ones Mom made when we were young birthdays camping school projects. It was strange flipping through it. Not painful, not even sad, just foreign, like watching footage from someone else's life. I closed it and placed it on the fire pit outside. We didn't make a speech, just lit it. The flames curled around the past like it was nothing special. Because in the end, it wasn't. It was just paper and ink, and I was done carrying it. I saved one thing, an old voicemail from Dad, from months before he passed. His voice warm and crackling with age said, "Lucas, take care of those kids. That's your only real job now. Nothing else matters, and I've never forgotten it." So I made one final choice. I changed our last names. Not for the kids, though they were included. For me. I went back to my grandfather's original surname. The one he brought over from Krakow before Ellis Island turned it into something forgettable. I wanted something clean, something mine. No announcement, no parade. Just a signature, a quiet nod at the courthouse, and a deep exhale as the paperwork was stamped. We moved that fall. Smaller town, closer to the lake, better school district, less noise. New neighbors, no history. The kids adjusted quickly. We got a cat. Kayla named her Puzzle. Theo started collecting bottle caps for no real reason. Our routines clicked into place like they'd always been waiting for us. Nobody knew our story here. Nobody had expectations. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like a stand-in. I felt real. The old number is still active technically, but no one calls anymore. I don't think they even know where we are. Good, because I'm not hiding. I just don't live in their world anymore. And I don't want my kids growing up in a place where love is conditional and silence is currency. We've built something better. Not perfect, but better. And that's more than enough. It was the first week of October when it happened. The leaves had just started turning that kind of orange that only exists for a week before everything dulls into gray. The cabin weekends had become habit by then. Theo packed the board games Kayla always brought her sketchbook. We had a rhythm. It wasn't loud or impressive, but it was ours. Peaceful, like something we'd earned. So I wasn't ready when Kayla came through the front door one afternoon after school, holding an envelope in both hands like it might shatter. She said nothing at first, just looked at me with wide, quiet eyes. "It's for me," she finally said, setting it on the table. Not you. The handwriting on the front was shaky. The kind of cursive you only learn from practice or pain. There was no return address, but I didn't need one. I recognized it instantly. My mother, the slant of the R's, the way she dotted her I's with almost no space above. My stomach sank before I even touched it. I didn't open it. Not yet. I stared at it like it was a grenade and the pin had already been pulled. Kayla sat across from me waiting. She found us, I said under my breath. Kayla frowned. It came in my school mailbox. That was the part that made my skin crawl. She didn't mail it to our home. She mailed it to my daughter's school. Found the address somehow. Sent a letter directly to a 10-year-old. This wasn't a reunion attempt. This was infiltration. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single page of notebook paper folded into quarters like a note passed in class. No cards, no photos, just that familiar pen. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You're right. We broke trust and I broke your little girls. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know I realize now. Grandma, that was it. No excuses, no stories, no manipulations. For a split second, I didn't know what to feel. Kayla whispered, "Can I write her back?" And just like that, I was back in the fire. Not from her letter, but from my daughter's question. My gut screamed, no. Every nerve in me snapped to attention. Every memory of a forged lease of a cold Christmas door of my son and daughter sitting in a diner wondering why their family didn't want them, all of it surged forward. This could be another setup, another trap disguised as closure. But this wasn't about me anymore. This was about Kayla, her voice, her right to choose something different than the silence I'd grown up with. So I exhaled and said, "Write what's in your heart." That evening, we sat at the kitchen table under the soft yellow light. Theo was reading comic books on the couch, half listening. Kayla wrote with her favorite glitter pen, the one with a little star on the cap. Her letter was short. "Thank you for your letter. I miss you sometimes. I feel safe here with Dad. I hope you can find happiness too. Love, Kayla." She handed it to me to send. I read it once. I didn't edit. I didn't correct. I just folded it, sealed it in a plain envelope, no return address, and mailed it from a box 3 towns over. That night, after they were asleep, I sat alone in the living room. No TV, no distractions. Just thinking. Forgiveness is funny. People treat it like a currency, something you hand over after someone says the right string of words. But it's not that. Forgiveness is a choice. A decision to let someone's actions stop defining your story. And sometimes that means giving someone another chance. Other times it means acknowledging the past without reopening the door. I didn't feel peace after mailing Kayla's note. I felt hollow, because I knew that this was the second twist. The first was the letter. The second was that my daughter, without being told, had drawn a line that didn't come from fear or bitterness. It came from something better. Clarity. I wasn't the one building boundaries anymore. She was, and that meant I had done something right. Still, I couldn't sleep that night. I walked the house, checked the locks, looked out the windows, even though I knew she wouldn't be out there. But some part of me still expected the drama, the ambush, the meltdown. Nothing came, just stillness. A week passed, then 2. Then a new package showed up, not to Kayla, not to me, but to Theo. Inside an old toy train he'd mentioned months ago, the one he said Grandpa used to run on the fireplace track. There was a note typed this time, from Becca. I thought he might want it. Tell him it's from someone who regrets a lot. No signature, no address, just silence sealed into a box. Theo loved the train. Didn't ask where it came from. Just plugged it in, watched it circle the small loop of track over and over. I stood there watching him, not knowing what to say. This was the new battlefield. Letters instead of visits. Memory instead of presence. They weren't trying to come back. They were trying to linger. The next day, I updated our P.O. box. Switched to a new one, different town. I told the kids we were simplifying. They nodded, didn't question it, because by now they understood. You can love people and still say no. You can miss someone and still keep the door closed. A few nights later, Kayla asked me if Grandma was still sad. I paused, then said, maybe, but that's not yours to carry. She nodded, almost relieved. That was when I knew this wasn't about estrangement anymore. This was about legacy. I had broken the pattern. The one where pain gets passed down like furniture, where guilt is wrapped up as tradition. I didn't need them to feel what I felt. I just needed them not to hand it off to my kids. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just surviving my childhood, I was ending it. Autumn melted into early winter, like it always does here. Slow at first, then suddenly sharp. The lake froze early this year. By November, Kayla and Theo were racing the geese to the edge of the ice, tossing breadcrumbs, even though I told them geese don't need carbs. They laughed anyway. That's the kind of sound that makes everything worth it. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just that laughter without tension. By then, the letters had stopped. Becca didn't follow up. My mother hadn't found another loophole to reach through. Evan hadn't surfaced. It was like they all finally accepted the silence wasn't temporary. It was permanent. And the relief that came from that, the absence of waiting for the next move, wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Like finally hearing your own breathing after the noise dies down. But I wasn't naive. I knew they'd never see what they did the way I lived it. To them, I was overreacting, holding a grudge, tearing apart the family over a few misunderstandings. That was always the difference. I felt the cut. They only ever saw the Band-Aid. December rolled in with its usual weight. The lights, the fake joy commercials, the family is everything slogans on every card. I tried to ignore it, but the holidays are funny like that. They seep into your routine. At the grocery store, the clerk asked if I was hosting Christmas dinner. I smiled and said no, just brunch with the kids. She didn't press. The kids were older now, old enough to sense nuance, but still young enough to believe in things. On Christmas morning, they didn't mention Grandma or Uncle Evan. No longing glances, no awkward questions, just stockings, pancakes, and a roaring fire that wasn't trying to be symbolic. Just warm. But that's when it hit me. This tiny, quiet, joyful moment is what I had fought for. Not revenge, not vindication, not even justice. Just the right to raise my kids in a space free from guilt-wrapped love. After breakfast, Theo asked if he could paint snow monsters on the windows. Kayla said she'd write poems to go with them. I sat at the table sipping coffee, watching them tape up their work. The sun had just started slicing through the trees. I looked out and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace without suspicion. That afternoon, I pulled out an old storage box from the hall closet. One of the last things I hadn't sorted through since the move. Inside were loose photos, outdated insurance paperwork, a few keepsakes I hadn't had the nerve to toss. Among them was a card, not one I remembered receiving. It must have been stuck in an envelope from a decade ago. It was from my dad, handwritten. No occasion, just a note. Lucas, I know you try to keep everyone balanced. I hope one day you choose your own peace, not just theirs. You deserve that. Dad. I stared at that note like it had arrived just now. Not dusty, not old, but right on time. Maybe he knew. Maybe he saw it coming. Maybe he understood better than I ever gave him credit for. That night, I didn't do anything grand. No bonfires, no speeches. I just folded the card and tucked it into a new envelope. Labeled it simply, for later. Then I opened a blank document on my computer and started writing something I hadn't dared before. A letter to my kids. Not for now. For someday. Telling them everything. Not to make them pick sides. Not to make them hate anyone. But so that when they're old enough to wonder, really wonder, they'll have my words. My reasons. My truth. Not just fragments or feelings or weird gaps in family history. The letter ended like this. I didn't stay angry. I just stopped letting pain rent space in our home. You were my reason. You were always my reason. I saved it, encrypted the folder, and backed it up twice. That was my closure. Not their apologies. Not their guilt. Just this telling my truth without asking permission. And then came the snow. Heavy blanketing silent. We stayed inside for 3 days straight. Built forts, made soup, let the world shrink. The kids never once asked to see them. They didn't bring up old traditions. They were here in this moment building new ones. That was when I really knew that the damage stopped with me. I hadn't escaped the family. I'd rebuilt the definition. And when spring comes again, I won't be looking over my shoulder. I won't be scrolling through messages wondering if another letter is coming. I've locked every door that needs locking, left every bridge I didn't need unwalked. They think this was exile, but it wasn't. It was return to myself, to the version of life I had once believed was impossible. And now that I'm here, I'm never handing it back. Not for peace, not for guilt, not even for nostalgia. Because this is home, and we earned it. Story 2. A voicemail was left by my mother. You're gone. Don't return. We are proceeding without you. I responded to the text. Noted. The following morning, I removed my name from the real estate transaction I had financed, flagged their joint bank account, and revoked my permission from the family trust. Their lawyer left a message that said, "We have a serious problem," and there were 79 missed calls. With a loud laugh, I answered. I was prepared to throw them out of my life right then and there, without hesitation. I have no regrets how they responded to it. It was almost impossible for me to control myself because they were so casual and aloof. They seemed to have been waiting for the ideal reason to fire me. They didn't even attempt to pretend to be sympathetic now that they had it. The voicemail arrived while I was at work. My mom's voice was flat and only tens of seconds long. Not upset, not sentimental, just got done. You're gone. Don't return. Without you, we'll survive. To make sure I heard it correctly, I played it twice. My name was not mentioned by her. She didn't explain why, only those words, as if they've been practiced. I didn't bother to return the call. That tone was familiar to me. When something was final, I knew it. I then responded with 2 of my own words. I understand. I went to work after that. I started by logging into the trust account. After all, I was the one who organized it. They had no idea how it operated. All they knew was that I told them it was for the future of the family. I took my consent away. Without my signature, that trust could not function. Everything they had planned, including future investments, tax shelters, and even the emergency access clause, was suddenly frozen. The joint account followed. It was intended to assist my parents in case of an emergency, similar to last year when my dad broke his wrist at work. However, I have recently observed grocery shopping, internet shopping, and even restaurant fees. I locked it using 2-factor authentication connected to my personal email and completely shut it down. The balance fell to 0. In any case, that was my money. I then withdrew from the real estate transaction. Just outside of Portland, we were in escrow on a modest 2-story home. My down payment, my name, and my credit. I consented to assist them in purchasing a retirement home, provided that it remained in my name until they were able to make their share payment. My name was taken off the agreement after I called the agent. I didn't explain, but she was shocked. When someone leaves a 10-word voicemail, no one ever receives an explanation. It was finished by the time I got home. Everything had my name on it. I anticipated some backlash, perhaps a few irate texts. I was surprised to discover that I had 79 missed calls when I woke up. As soon as I turned on my phone, it began to buzz continuously. Dad called first, followed by Mom, then a series of unidentified numbers, and finally their lawyer's voicemail. "We've got a big issue. Give me a call back, please." I didn't. I laughed as I stood in my kitchen. It wasn't sour. It wasn't coerced. Relief was felt. I didn't have to solve their problem for once. Mom began sending the texts at noon. "Dad, we didn't mean it that way. It was merely a miscommunication. Let's hear my sister out." Nothing. Her silence spoke louder than words could. It wasn't a coincidence, I knew. For weeks, she had been giving us clues about how we should simplify the house ownership process and streamline things. She had always been skilled at framing situations to appear helpful. That was her specialty. Come close, be naive, manipulate. Even when she didn't deserve it, I used to stand up for her. Now, though, I began to make connections. It had not been an unexpected increase in domestic tension. It had a source, and I felt as though I was looking directly into it. Our parents had always trusted me, and she had always envied that. I was in charge of the finances, the logistics, and the plants. She wasn't involved until now, but she was always decorative around. She now convinced them that I was the issue. She must have told them something so serious that they threw me out without saying anything. She did, however, underestimate one thing. When I'm cast out, I don't return. When I want to burn it all down, I return. I didn't mind the silence. After everything they said or didn't say, I actually welcomed it. I reasoned that we all needed Space Bay to make me anxious. I didn't pick up their phones. I refrained from opening their texts. I didn't even pay attention to the remaining voicemails that were accumulating. I waited. I wanted to see how long it would take for their communication front to start showing signs of desperation. 3 days passed. My phone rang that morning with a security alert from the building. At the front gate was my dad. He was there for no reason. Through the camera feed, I observed him. He made no attempt to call me. He simply shifted his weight, checked his phone, and then looked up as if I might be visible through a window. For nearly 10 minutes, he waited. He was not buzzed in by me. I discovered a folder note taped to my door later that evening. My mother gave it to me. There was no mistaking her handwriting. Like she was still in Catholic school, she was slanted and neat. Not much was said in the note. Many evasive excuses. We didn't mean to hurt you, according to a few lines. Additionally, please avoid making decisions that you cannot reverse. After reading it once, I threw it in the garbage. No accountability, no explanation. Just more gentle words meant to entice me back. My sister hasn't responded yet. I was surprised that she contacted me. She was most likely busy rejoicing over what she perceived to be a victory. She was able to force me to leave the family dynamic, the house, and the trust. She had also done it in silence and without conflict. Her style was that. Subtle sabotage masquerading as helpfulness. It was time for me to take action. I made a phone call to the real estate agent we have been collaborating with. She responded right away, initially with a smile, but then her tone changed. I requested that she give my parents a formal notice of my withdrawal. After hesitating, she stated that she didn't want to become involved in a family dispute. I told her, "You're not in the middle. A paper trail is you." The email was sent by her. I didn't have to watch their response. I had a good enough imagination. The icy shock of witnessing something irrevocable in writing. Ignoring a text or voicemail was one thing. Receiving a legal notice stating that your son had formally withdrawn from the one thing that was keeping your finances afloat was another. My mom made 6 more attempts to call the following morning. None of them were answered. Their attorney sent me an email by the afternoon. Only one line caught our attention. "This is more complicated than you may imagine." For a while, I sat with that. More about this. So, I waited. My sister finally spoke up that evening. She sent me a 1-sentence text. "I hope your accomplishments make you proud." I gazed at it. There is no punctuation, just enough poison to make sure I was right. Everything had been done by her. And now that she was not getting the results she had anticipated, her hold was beginning to slip. She believed that I would either explode with rage or come crawling back. She failed to realize that I had absolutely no plans to return, not until all the damage had been done. At a petrol station the following day, I ran into one of my dad's old pals. We hadn't communicated for more than a year. He grinned, inquired about the house before jokingly saying something that stuck with me. "I've heard that you were unable to cope with the financial strain, so you withdrew from the agreement. Hard stuff." I grinned and didn't correct him, but it made sense to me. Her version of events was already being disseminated. It was at that point that I called our previous accountant. My sister insisted that we find someone younger, more fashionable, and more proactive. I scheduled a meeting and gave him the documents pertaining to the trust. I still had copies. He recalled every detail. What I inquired could undermine the trust from within without being readily apparent. He gave me a cautious look, said he didn't want to get involved, but then he offered one hint if someone gave the wrong kind of information to your parents and made it seem like it came from you. That could easily tip the scales. I only needed to hear that. She had been playing puppet master, feeding them lies, inciting paranoia, and possibly fabricating some details, but now I had a direction. All to clear the path for me. However, she was unaware that she was no longer safe the moment she declared me an enemy. I didn't have to yell. I didn't require retribution. Not just yet. All I had to do was wait for the right opportunity to ruin her own tale in front of them. It didn't take me long to dig. The cracks appeared sooner than I thought they would. Initially, the new accountant called, now their accountant. In his voicemail, he asked me to explain some inconsistencies between the bank activity and the trust documents. This was the first time I had ever spoken to him. Why should I make any clarifications? I didn't return his call. I sent the message to my former accountant instead. He gave me a call within an hour. It sounds like an attempt was made to change the trust. Without my signature, he said. I inquired. That's where the inconsistency lies. Although he was unable to verify who had started the changes, it was clear that someone had tried to enact them covertly. Someone who didn't realize that my legal authority was still there in spite of all the emotional chaos. Only because I became silent. As soon as he said, a man, I knew who it was and that she had attempted to fill the role I had created. I simply didn't think she would act so irresponsibly. The following week, when I had lunch with a cousin, I hardly spoke to things improved. She abruptly messaged me to let me know that she had heard something strange and wanted to discuss it with me. She was unaware of the specifics. Simply put, my sister had been telling family members that I was severing ties with them because I was greedy, that I had always been domineering, and that I didn't want to share anything. I chuckled. The word controlling sounded dirty, so she used it. She was certain that people would accept it. The trick was that you don't make extreme accusations against people, just enough to change the story. However people converse, they contrast narratives. And when she erred, things began to fall apart. She gave my cousin one version and my uncle another. Different motivations, slightly different timelines. The same goal, me. I didn't say anything publicly. I didn't start a family group chat. War. I waited. Then came the moment I didn't expect but couldn't have planned better. An email from the real estate agent. She'd accidentally CC me on a reply to my sister. My sister had apparently contacted her trying to see if the property could still be salvaged without me on the contract, and casually implied I'd pulled out due to mental instability. That's when something in me snapped. Mental instability. That's how she was framing it. She was trying to discredit me. To the one person who could confirm how much I put into that house. The one person who knew I was the reason the deal was even possible. I replied directly to the agent, copied my lawyer, and attached proof of all payments I'd made toward the deal, including a forwarded email from months earlier showing that the whole thing was my idea to begin with. The agent replied within an hour, her tone stiff and professional now. She thanked me for the clarification and said she would not be engaging in any further non-transactional communication with my sister. I knew what would happen next, and I was right. That night, my phone rang. Mom again. I let it go to voicemail, then Dad. Then, finally, my sister, I picked up. She jumped right in, accused me of trying to destroy everything and playing the victim, just because she asked a few questions. I let her rant. Then I asked one thing. Why'd you lie about me to the real estate agent? Quiet. Then she hung up. That was the first real crack, the one I could use. I didn't know yet what exactly she told her parents, but it had to be something personal, something believable, something that made them turn on me without a second thought. I just had to get them to say it out loud, and then I'd burn it down. It happened sooner than I thought. The following Sunday, my mom called again. I let it ring. Then I saw a text. Please just give us 5 minutes. No accusations. Don't shout. 5 minutes. That was all I needed. I called back. They were on speaker. I could hear the tension before anyone spoke. My dad started fumbling through a half-prepared statement about how things got out of hand. My mom cut in saying they never wanted to hurt me, that they were just reacting to what they were told. That was my opening. Told by who? I inquired. Quiet. Then my dad cleared his throat. Your sister said you were planning to take full control of everything, that you were trying to leave us with. Nothing that you said we were dragging you down. I couldn't even react. I was too stunned at how specific and stupid that lie was. I kept my voice calm. When did I say that? Your mom hesitated. She said you told her a few weeks ago in the car after that argument at dinner. There had never been a car ride. There had never even been an argument at that dinner. We'd eaten in awkward silence and left in separate cars. It was such a clear, dumb fabrication that I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, "Did it ever occur to you to ask me?" They didn't respond. She also told us you'd already met with a lawyer about cutting us out of the trust. My dad added that you wanted her to take over once we were pushed out. That's when I knew she hadn't just bent the truth. She'd reversed it. She took everything she was doing behind the scenes and pinned it on me. And they bought it because it was easier to believe their son turned greedy than admit their daughter was manipulating them for a bigger slice. I didn't shout. I didn't elaborate. I said, meet me tomorrow. All of you. No excuses. I'll bring the documents, you bring the lies. They agreed. The next evening, we sat at their dining room table. I had a folder with bank statements, email printouts, and the forwarded message from the real estate agent where my sister casually implied I was mentally unstable. She sat across from me, arms crossed, defiant, like this was still her stage. I started with the agent's email, then the payments I made, then the texts she'd sent to relatives. Each time I laid something down, I didn't speak. I let the words do the work. My mom stared at the table. My dad kept glancing at her like she might save the moment. Then I finished with the last document, a forwarded message from our old accountant confirming that a recent attempt had been made to alter the trust by someone pretending to have joint authority. That was the final straw. My sister looked like she wanted to speak, but for once, she didn't know what to say. I stood up. You wanted me out. Congratulations. Now you're out. I turned to my parents. She lied. And you let her. You believed her because it was easier than talking to me. No one argued. My mom finally spoke her voice. Keep quiet. We didn't know. You didn't ask, I said, and walked out. 2 days later, I got a text from my dad. Just one sentence. We've removed her from the trust. Then from my mom. We were wrong. Please come back. I didn't reply right away. Letting her twist the knife had taken planning, but making them see it had taken patience. And now that the spell was broken, I wasn't finished yet. Because forgiveness doesn't cancel consequences. 3 days after they removed her from the trust, my sister showed up at my office. I didn't know how she found the address. I moved locations a year ago and hadn't told anyone. Maybe she dug through old emails. Or maybe she followed me. Either way, she stood in the lobby like nothing had happened. Like she had a right to be there. She asked for 10 minutes. I gave her 5. She walked in, smiling all fake calm as if this was just some silly misunderstanding between siblings. She said she understood now that things got a little out of hand and that our parents had overreacted. She never acknowledged lying. She skirted it, blaming it on emotions, stress, and confusion. She then went straight to the point. Her goal was to put things right. Not with me, with the company. In fact, she thought she could still work for the family company. She asked if I would think about giving her a small role now that she was formally no longer in the trust. She added that it will demonstrate to our parents that our family is still strong. It nearly made me laugh. I got up and went to the file cabinet where I took out a folder that I hadn't looked at in months. It was an old business proposal draft. At one point, she pleaded with me to examine a shaky pitch for a lifestyle company. Would go viral, she believed. She had requested money. I had refused. Start your own, I said, passing the folder to her. Bewildered, she turned the pages. When she finally realized this wasn't a diversion, she turned to face me. The end was in sight. "Do you believe that you are punishing me?" she inquired. "No." "Not yet," I said. She bounded out. That night, I didn't stop her. I gave the accountant another call, asked him how long it would take to formally move the family's collective controlling interest in the company accounts into a two-person structure, my dad and I. No gaps, no one else can enter. By the end of the week, he said it could be completed. I awaited the completion of the paperwork. Then I took action. Nobody anticipated it. I requested a meeting with my parents over the phone. Only us. I told them everything I had discovered when we sat down to dinner. Messages, emails, and the phony timeline. The intention to change the trust was forged. I explained everything. Then I said something unexpected to them. I'm prepared to restore everything. The house, the joint ownership, the trust. But only if she's totally disconnected. My mother appeared uncomfortable. My father didn't. That's what he said. Completed. And that made it official. I added my name back into the real estate transaction that same week. The agent was pleased, but surprised. This time, the financing process was swift. My assets, my credit, and my power. I kept my sister in the dark. I let her look it up in the public property records instead. The following morning, she texted once. "You took it from me?" I didn't respond. Her best friend, whom I had known for years, messaged me later that afternoon. Only a single line. "Her goal has been to obtain a loan. Nobody is going to co-sign." I grinned. She wanted to take the house from me, mine once more. She attempted to take over the trust, rebuilt without her. The company she attempted to enter, sealed off for good. And there was nobody coming to her aid. Not now. 3 weeks of silence. She said nothing, after everything. Following the deception, manipulation, and smear campaign. Silence enveloped my sister. I thought there would be another move. Perhaps a legal threat or some other covert effort to distort the facts. However, nothing was present. Not a phony apology either. There was nothing she could do. My parents and I were gradually restoring what was left in the interim. We began with minor tasks. On Sundays, coffee helps them organize their moving documents. Discussions of the past without recoiling from it. They ceased to defend her. They saw everything not because I asked them to. Now obviously without any excuses or filters. My mother pulled out the old folder containing the original real estate contract one evening. She asked if I would think about going back to the original plan, which called for my dad, her, and me to share ownership of the new house. I didn't immediately say yes. Rather, I created a new plan that gave them complete living rights and full ownership in my name, along with a written notarized agreement. No expiration date, no obligations, no rent. A legal provision would enable them to stay without fear of the property being contested in the event that something happened to me. My sister in particular could never touch it. Without hesitation, they agreed. Now it was more than a house. A reset was made. My name was back where it should have been when I entered the title office the following week and signed the updated paperwork. Once more, the house was ours. Mine to protect theirs for habitation. She wasn't simply gone. Legally, she couldn't do anything. 2 days later, the trust was finalized. Now it was just my parents and me. The provisions were unchangeable. Any interference would result in a complete audit and automatic freeze. That was ensured by our accountant. The voicemail block number then appeared. Later, when I checked it, I let it go. She sounded worn out. Not as big as I thought. "I'm sorry things turned out like this," she said. "You've made your point. I just hope someday you can be mature enough to move on." I deleted it. Nothing was left to move on from. I didn't have anything to show her. She took her shot, tried to get me out of the picture, and now she was outside looking in. Later, according to my dad, she called him and said she needed money to launch a new business. She didn't ask to rejoin the family merely to get support. "No," he said. There was no dramatic pause, no lengthy explanation. Simply put, no. That was the first time in my life I saw him draw a line without flinching. The day we moved into the new house was quiet. No celebration, Just me and my parents unloading boxes, figuring out who gets which room. My mom hung a photo of the three of us from 10 years ago, one of the few where we looked like a real team. She said she was tired of pretending things hadn't changed. We were different now, wiser, a little bruised, but whole again. A few days later, her old best friend. Send me a message. Apparently, my sister had been reaching out to anyone who would listen. People she hadn't spoken to in years, trying to paint herself as the victim. She said she'd been cut out of everything unfairly, that I'd manipulated our parents, that I'd stolen what was hers. Nobody was buying it. The friends sent a final message. Whatever you did, she's completely alone now. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was to confirm that the door that remained closed on her was the same one that she slammed behind me. She desired authority. Leverage was what she sought. Grinning as though she had earned it, she believed she could push me out and step in cleanly. However, she was no longer seated at the table. No name on any papers, no access. Not a tale. Anyone could believe. What about the three of us? We were at home. A brief update. We've been in the house for a month now. Finally, things have stabilized. I've established a routine with my parents. It's silent. Simple. We don't discuss the incident. We've moved past it not because it's uncomfortable. I'm no longer waiting for the next betrayal because they trust me once more. She has stopped talking altogether. No calls, no texts. Someone told me that she is renting a modest space. She attempted to launch something on her own, but it failed. She destroyed all relationships. She owned the house, the business, and the trust. Everything is secured, steady, mine. I no longer feel angry. Just be clear. She believed she would gain everything if she cut me off. She has nothing now, though, and it should be just that way. Story 3. My dad said I wasn't invited to the family dinner and called me a burden. There, nobody wants to see you. He chuckled. Really don't spoil the mood, my brother added. I simply grinned and slipped out of the family group chat. I started by canceling the card that was connected to their mortgage. The business account was then locked by me. Everybody shared. They didn't anticipate what I did next, though. After everything I did for them, including helping them pay off the last portion of the mortgage, they promised to manage funding their business aspirations and saving them from debt. I was told not to attend the dinner, not just any meal. It was for Rachel, my sister, who had recently returned from 2 years of working overseas in Europe. Everyone would be present. My brother Nathan, my parents, and the cousins, uncles. Everybody but me. Not even a phone call was made. Just a note in the chat room for the family group. Oliver, hello? On Sunday, don't come. There nobody wants to see you. At first I thought it was an error. Perhaps he intended to send that to a different person. Nathan then added his voice. Don't ruin the mood, please. I realized then that it was real. My own dad had declared me unwelcome. My brother supported it as if it were inconsequential. I remained silent. I didn't even respond to the text. Quietly, I exited the group chat. After that, I canceled the card that was used to pay their mortgage and opened the banking app. I owned it. When Dad was having trouble and was too proud to ask for assistance, I had set it up, acting as though nothing was wrong while the bills mounted. I then put the joint business account on hold. The LLC had been founded by me. The first deals came from me. As if I were merely the IT guy behind the scenes, they dared to put their names on it. Rachel was the part that hurt the most. She remained silent. Not even a check-in message. She and Nathan had always been close, and it didn't seem like anything had changed after 2 years in Europe. She returned with gifts and stories for everyone. Not for me, though. I didn't immediately tell Li Ling. I was unable to eat the dinner that was scheduled for us. She didn't ask any questions when I eventually told her. Just do what you have to do, she said. So I did. I received 5 voicemails from my father, 1 from my mother, 2 from cousins, and an email from Cole by the following morning. What you did was unacceptable, Oliver. It wasn't about you at that dinner. It had to do with family. You are behaving like a kid. After reading it twice, I erased it. family. Coming from them, that word had lost much of its meaning. I then received the follow-up. "We were kidding. Avoid overreacting," I responded at that point. "Remove me from the family company. I'm finished." I made a copy of our attorney. "No more acting like you're someone you're not." The consequences were immediate. Calls from family members I hadn't seen in a long time. Mom told me I was overreacting while sobbing on the phone. My father said I had betrayed them. I won't repeat the things Nathan texts me. And they continued to blame Lily throughout it all. Before she came along, "You were a good son," according to my mother. As though my identity was erased by being with someone who was born in a different nation. She had always been regarded as an outsider by them. Made remarks they believed to be nuanced. At one point, my father inquired if she could speak English at home. She was asked if she knew how to operate a dishwasher by my aunt. During it all, Ling Ling said nothing. It did matter, even though she told me it didn't. It has accumulated to this point. They were angry now. They were afraid now, since I had always been the one who kept quiet. The person who volunteered without being asked. The person who remained silent. No longer. The morning following my email send, removing them from the company. I've been anticipating a visitor to my flat. However, nobody did. The silence caught me off guard. No messages, no calls. There was a spooky silence, as if the entire family had gone underground, getting back together. However, they emerged with a vengeance by noon. This time, the group email came from Dad's personal address rather than the chat room. Subject line: "Your decisions have an impact." Stepped in when the drama broke out, along with Mom, Rachel, Nathan, and two of our uncles who weren't involved in the business, but always caused a lot of noise. It sounded like a well-planned assault. Like they've been writing it together at the dinner table. Guilt denial and passive aggression are all mixed together. I was accused of manipulation, told I would embarrass the family, and denied an invitation to Dad's part. Mom had a longer part. She discussed making sacrifices, how they left everything behind in Shanghai to raise their kids in an environment full of opportunities, how my identity and roots were being sacrificed for someone who doesn't even share our values. Then, in the same breath, she wrote that she was praying for me and hoped I'd remember where I came from. I noticed Rachel's name on the CC list, but she didn't write anything. That was all I needed to know. They made it clear that I had overstepped, that I had no right to touch family property. I knew they believed they were being strategic, even though the startup funds and the LLC paperwork were in my name. Play the victim. Paint me as the one who turned cold. Twist the knife. While smiling politely, I ignored the email and headed to the office. I built the company from scratch. I did freelance web development in college, then slowly scaled into real estate tech. They only got involved when they saw money coming in. I offered them a stake as a gesture, thinking maybe it would bring us closer. It didn't. It just gave them another reason to use me. 2 hours later, I got a call from my assistant. She said someone named Thomas Lee was waiting in the lobby and refusing to leave my dad. He never visited the office before. Not once. Not when we signed our first deal. Not when I expanded into 3 states. But now he was standing downstairs demanding to see me. I told her to let him up. He walked in like it was his boardroom. Didn't even acknowledge my staff and sat down without asking. He didn't waste time. "You've lost it," he said. "Rachel's homecoming wasn't about you. You think you're some kind of hero because you pay the bills. Family is in business, and business isn't family." I told him if you really believe that he wouldn't have put his name on a company he didn't build. That's when he snapped. Said if I wanted to act like an outsider, I shouldn't expect loyalty from my own blood. I said loyalty doesn't mean obedience. He walked out that same afternoon. I called my lawyer and told him to move forward with the paperwork for removal of every family member from any legal and financial ties to the business. I wasn't just freezing access, now I was deleting it. I thought maybe someone Rachel at least would call. She didn't. Nathan posted a cryptic message on his Instagram story about betrayal and snakes. A few of our extended family unfollowed me when it messaged me asking what Leland had done to me. I didn't even respond. I remembered every little moment they made her feel like she didn't belong. How they smiled at her like she was a tourist in our family. How my mom always asked if she missed her real home. How they mocked her accent when they thought she wasn't listening. She always told me to let it go, said it wasn't worth it. But I saw how it hurt her. That evening, she came home to find me sitting in silence at the kitchen table, laptop open, email drafts, and sent. She looked at me and said, "Don't back down." That was all. No drama, just quiet support. We took a walk later, past all these houses glowing warm with people inside. Families having dinner, laughing, watching TV. I realized something during that walk. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them. The version of my family I used to wish existed. And I finally understood something I'd been trying to ignore my whole life. They only wanted me around when I was useful. Now that I was standing up for myself, I wasn't just unwelcome. I was dangerous. But I was done being useful. I was done being polite. And I was all in. The story had spread throughout the entire family by the end of that week. My existence was suddenly remembered by people I hadn't spoken to in years. Additionally, Linda left a 5-minute voicemail in which she described how I was destroying the family. On Facebook, one of my cousins, who was still living in our hometown, made a vague tirade about entitled people who believe that money is more important than family. Other relatives gave it a few likes. They were frantically attempting to manipulate the story to make it appear as though I was unstable and had gone rogue. I was being manipulated by that lying, which was separating me from my heritage. Some even implied that she might be merely pursuing my money, as if they hadn't subsisted on it for years. When Mom texted me to say I was humiliating her in front of the entire community, I knew things were getting out of hand. Shame was a powerful word. It implied that she felt publicly humiliated in addition to being upset. However, none of them ever inquired as to why. They didn't inquire as to why I interrupted them, why I left, why I stopped acting as though they were unwilling to listen. They wanted me to crawl back quietly and apologize. They preferred the me that remained silent during dinner while they made fun of others, such as by lying, and then laughed about it. I was no longer that person. When Rachel invited everyone but me to a second dinner, the tension finally broke out. One more, smaller this time, she said in a text message that somehow reached me via a cousin, just siblings and close family. She was careful to explain that it was to set the record straight, remove me from the room, and clear the air. By now, I had sent our lawyer the message. The paperwork was nearly finished. My attorney had already submitted a request for the business structure to be reclassified. Each name was associated with the initial contract. Dad. Even Mom's silent shares were being taken away, Nathan. Only one more document remained. A declaration nullifying any partnership rights in the past. There was no turning back once it was filed, he said. Before I signed it, Lila asked if I was certain. Yes, I replied. The speed of their retaliation shocked me the most. They went directly to the longtime family friend who had introduced me to my first client years prior, a man named Mark, with whom I had always maintained a cordial rapport. They made an effort to win him over to their cause. He didn't. They don't realize you don't tell them anything anymore, he wrote in a message to me. That was the reality. I didn't. However, the animosity was brewing. They began accusing me of betraying my country, to everyone else but not to my face, as if defending lying was betrayal. Nathan told a mutual friend that I had turned against my own blood for a woman, as though setting limits amounted to rebellion. Then one evening, Mom unexpectedly dropped by my flat. She knocked while standing outside the door. I didn't open it. I thought I would never hear her say those things when she called through the door. That they no longer recognized me, that I had disgraced them, and that I was picking a stranger over my parents. Then she said it. Perhaps we no longer have a son, if this is who you are now. The door was not opened by me. I simply listened while standing on the opposite side. Eventually, she departed. I sat down with Lila that evening and told her everything. I let go of every memory and every small moment. I laughed off every insult. They always meant well, I told myself. She made no attempt to fix it. She simply remained. That night, I also came to another realization. They had always given me the impression that I could be severed with a single choice. One disagreement, one option. And they wouldn't like me. I therefore made that decision for them. After a week, my mother stood outside my door and declared that I was no longer her son. Perhaps at last there would be silence. I had made up my mind and they had said their piece. We were finished. However, I was mistaken. I was organizing a weekend trip to Carmel with Lila. Something subtle so you can take a moment to relax. It had been 2 days since I last checked my emails, just attempting to unplug. However, I discovered a notice from the state business registry when I opened my inbox on Monday morning. I was the target of a fraud complaint. I initially believed it to be a scam, but I was mistaken. According to the complaint, I unlawfully kicked partners out of a joint venture without their permission. I didn't have to guess that it was signed anonymously. They were attempting to legally restrain me, reduce the pace, bring me to court, perhaps. I forwarded it directly to my attorney who verified my suspicions. Although there was no actual legal basis for the complaint, it might cause weeks or even months of delay in the restructuring. Leland received a message on Instagram that same day from an unfamiliar user. The lengthy paragraph was obviously written by a family member. It was too familiar a language, too pointed. It claimed that she had destroyed a family, that she ought to feel guilty for separating me from the people who raised and fed me. It warned her to get out of my way before more harm was done. There were pictures of Rachel and Nathan in the followers list, but the account was private and had no name. The line was that. I never imagined that they would target her specifically. Not in that manner, not anonymous, and not cowardly. Once she read the message, I deleted it without saying anything. I could see, though, that it shook her. I took a car to Nathan's house that evening. Since the beginning of this, I had not seen him in person. I did not make a call. I simply arrived. He answered the door with the arrogant look he always had when he believed he was in control. I inquired as to whether he was aware of the message that was sent to Lily. At first, he remained silent, simply grinned while leaning against the doorframe. Then he said, "Well, perhaps no one would feel the need to reach out if you weren't so dramatic." I chuckled because it validated everything, not because it was amusing. I instructed him to inform the family that this would be the final instance. I would ensure that every skeleton in their closets was exposed to the IRS, the bank, and anybody else who cared to look if they pursued her once more. That was the last time he smiled. Before he could say another word, I walked away. Rachel sent me a lengthy message the following morning. She had never contacted her directly before. She said I'd gone too far, that no matter how badly they acted, it didn't give me the right to tear everything down. She said family meant forgiveness even when it was hard. I almost replied. But then she ended the message with this. "Mom and Dad said they're done with you. You can still fix this, but you need to fix it now." That was it. No apology, no recognition of what they've done. Just more pressure, more silence about what really mattered. And I finally understood they weren't mad because I hurt them. They were mad because I stopped letting them hurt me. They thought I was still the quiet one, the one who stayed late to help clean up after parties. I was barely acknowledged at the one who paid the bills. No one talked about the one who forgave everything. They never expected me to fight back, to walk away to win. But I had, and they were furious. 3 weeks after Rachel's message, everything felt ugly. Still, no calls, no emails, no messages from unknown numbers. I should have felt relieved. Instead, it felt like that pause before a storm hits. I kept waiting for something. Then it came. It started with a letter, not an email. A real letter was left in my office mailbox in a cream-colored envelope. No address for return. My dad gave it to me. It wasn't long. No excuses, no confessions, just a declaration. You are no longer a member of this family in our eyes. Never get in touch with us again. Don't come. You've already decided. It wasn't unexpected. Just seeing it in writing was startling. But then the unexpected turn of events occurred. Years ago, we co-invested in another joint property, and I discovered that they had sold their shares, an Oakland home. Without even informing me, they quietly sold it. Additionally, they managed to close the deal by using an old document with a fake digital signature, without my consent. The buyer's title company pointed it out, but they assumed I wouldn't notice. Before they completed the escrow release, they contacted me to verify my identity. That's how I learned. A legal assistant called me and asked if I had intended to approve the money transfer. The final authorization had my name on it, but I hadn't signed it. My attorney took over right away. An investigation into fraud was launched. The transaction was halted. I used a formal legal notice to confront them. For the first time in weeks, I made contact. I didn't even receive a reply. Nothing but quiet. That night, I told Lightning everything. She only asked me one question, which surprised me because I thought she would be afraid. Do you still think they will change in the future? In actuality, I didn't. A few days later, I received a totally unexpected message. Mark Rachel's ex-boyfriend. We hadn't communicated for more than a year. He asked if I had time for coffee when he unexpectedly called. I was curious enough to say yes despite my suspicions. He informed me that long before the dinner incident, the entire family had been plotting to force me out of the company for months. Nathan had apparently been sowing seeds behind the scenes by claiming that I was too emotional and unstable for the older family members. Not good for business. They were trying to figure out how to get rid of me without getting into trouble with the law. The message for dinner. That was no impulsive outburst. It was the initial blow. Mark claimed that after realizing how far they were prepared to go, he felt bad about keeping the information to himself. There was nothing for him to gain by telling me. Actually, he probably experienced more drama as a result. However, I told him it made too much sense and thanked him. After I left, they didn't suddenly turn against me. That night, they had been preparing the turn. I gave up something. Not in a defeated, resentful manner. It was more akin to acceptance, a sort of release of emotion. I had put in more effort than I ought to have, greater than they ever merited. What it had always been, I now saw. Conditional love encased in duty. I never answered the letter. The silence went unanswered by me. I just pulled off the last of the ties. The company formally stopped using the name Grant. I put my own name in its place. Only mine. Legacy is over. No more ties to family, only the company I founded. And a woman at my side who has never asked me to be someone I'm not. When they called me a traitor, they failed to remember one important fact about traitors. Only when they have something to betray do they pose a threat. And I no longer did. It was 2 months later. No noise, no contact. Everything simply stopped once the fraud report was closed in my favor and I regained control of the property. Even though I should have felt triumphant, I didn't. When you're competing against your own family, winning doesn't feel like anything. I was not anticipating an apology. Not that I was hoping for one. When my mother came to my door and informed me that they no longer had a son, I had put the prospect of a reconciliation in the past. It feels like a splinter lodged in my head. More than I'd like to admit, I repeated those words. Then the letter arrived. It was handwritten in Mom's meticulous script as if she still valued looks. No initial apology. Nothing is admitted. Just, we want to stop fighting. They miss me, she said. Claimed to be aware that they had gone too far. That in a few days, Rachel would return from Boston. They also wanted to sit down and simply converse. Another item, a photograph, was concealed within the envelope. It was one of the few times we all looked happy together. Dad laughing and grilling Rachel Nathan holding up a beer, and me younger grinning and foolishly holding a bowl of salad. I looked at it for a while. Then Nathan sent me a text. It's enough. They're growing older. Give it up. As simple as that. No, Don't ask how I was okay. Just more pressure under the guise of worry. He did not even admit their actions. The falsified records and the intimidation to lie. The fact that they made an effort to keep me out of my own affairs. It seemed as though if I just agreed to eat dinner with them once more, everything would be resolved. Rachel then added her voice as well. She was always the peacekeeper, the diplomatic one. She messaged, "I know it's hard, but don't let pride win. They're still your parents. You owe it to them to sit down." Oh, that word again. I read her message 3 times. Then I left it on read that night. Lila and I didn't talk much. We had a bottle of wine and sat on the balcony. She brought the same kind that evening. At first, they declined to meet her. I filled her in on the letter, the messages, and the picture. She simply listened. She finally made a statement. "It's been impossible for me to shake. You will always be perceived by them as the one who should bear the burden. They still desire peace, but they want you to bring it about." She was correct. An olive branch was not what this was. I expected to press this button, which was a reset button. I was also worn out. I'm sick of taking the brunt of the harm every time. I'm sick of justifying actions for people who never once stopped to consider the consequences of their actions. I'm fed up with trying to find a family that never existed. 1,000 times over, they could apologize. It wouldn't alter their perception of Lily, their use of money, loyalty, and silence as weapons, or the fact that they chose control over love when given the option. I sat with it then. The text, the picture, the letter. I also didn't respond, not just yet, because this is the reality. They didn't simply sabotage their opportunity, they set it on fire. However, retaliation is no longer the focus. It has to do with peace. I'm at peace. And perhaps that entails entering that dinner and voicing your opinions. Or perhaps it entails never responding again. Ignore it or let it haunt you. I'm not sure yet. However, I do know that I already have the update, so for the first time in my life, I don't need them to pick me. I never thought I'd be writing this. The letter was sent 3 weeks ago. I simply left everything unanswered, never responded, and never blocked them. I had lost my anger. I had just finished. I believed I was anyway. Then something happened last Friday that left me speechless. My mother arrived at my workplace. She arrived by herself. No text message in advance, no phone call. When I received the message, I simply walked in and asked the receptionist if she could talk to me. I nearly declined. However, my curiosity overcame me. She had 10 minutes, I told her. In some way, she appeared older and exhausted. It struck me that we were both growing older quickly after I hadn't seen her face in months. I poured her a glass of water in the meeting room, but she sat across from me and didn't touch it. She didn't plead. She didn't cry. "Your father is ill," she said. "Not only the chill. A few weeks ago, we learnt. He wanted you to be unaware of it." I remained silent. My mind was racing, but it wasn't clear what I was thinking. It was prostate cancer, she informed me. That he had begun treatment and that they discovered it late. However, it was hostile. That the doctors were concerned but hadn't said much yet. Then she added another statement. "He wishes to speak with you." "Why didn't he come himself?" I asked her. "He's been different lately," she said. Although he doesn't express it aloud, he feels a great deal of regret for having been viewing old pictures of me. That since everything fell apart, he hasn't touched the family business documents. I was at a loss for words. I wasn't emotionless. However, I also didn't experience the emotions I had anticipated. Not a torrent of pardon, not even anger, just misunderstanding. Before leaving, she slipped a tiny envelope across the table. Inside was a note from him handwritten. "I don't want to waste my remaining time acting like you're not my son." I was messed up by that line. I took the letter home with me, showed Lily. For a long time, we sat in silence, simply processing. She made no attempt to shoo me away. She did, however, say one thing. "You know nothing about them, but perhaps this is the resolution you're looking for."